If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, all right, everybody, hands up. Who didn't see this one coming? Oh, I am so surprised. I cannot believe that the lying, duplicitous snake in the grass, Daniel Cameron, the corrupt Attorney General of the good old boy Clavern of Kentucky, lied about the grand jury's decision regarding the Breonna Taylor murder. One of the grand jurors has gone rogue and broken his silence and hired an attorney to tell the public what it was that we have been suspecting all along, because it's what we knew. That Daniel Cameron, the corrupt Attorney General of Kentucky, lied when he claimed that, well, the reason that they didn't bring a murder indictment was that was the grand jury's decision. That was them. That was all them. There just wasn't anything there, you see. It was the grand jury. The grand jury has ruled it, and that means that that's the end of it. And the grand juror, at least one of them, saying no, the Attorney General never even gave us the chance to present homicide charges. He never even gave that as an option. Instead, what he said was, well, you can have this wanton endangerment thing, but there's not going to be any charges regarding murder. This is what I told you happened in the case of Michael Brown. The corrupt District Attorney McCullough, he lied. He went to the grand jury and had his prosecutors tell him, you don't have to bring back an indictment. Just flat out told him, you don't have to bring back an indictment. So whenever these grand jurors break their silence and talk to the media, what we find is that these district attorneys are telling them, do not bring back an indictment. It's exactly what we told you. The grand jury is where these prosecutors bury these prosecutions, but they want to do it in a way that politically insulates them. And now, because of this, we understand that the right-wing nuts and all these white supremacists and these black bootlicks who have been drinking the Kool-Aid, yeah, they knew that Daniel Cameron lied. They knew that the only reason that there was not any sort of indictment of the officers was because the prosecutors had been engaged in illegal maneuvering, because this is illegal. It is illegal for any sort of prosecutor to call himself misrepresenting what it was that he presented to a jury. And that's exactly what Daniel Cameron did. He's trying to this is malfeasance. Now we understand why it is that there were the windows being boarded up and such. That's because they already knew what the grand jury was going to come back with, because that's how they rigged it. They set it up like that. It was already arranged. There was no way in the world the grand jury was going to come back with an indictment of the 3 murderers of Breonna Taylor, because Daniel Cameron deliberately made sure that they're not even going to be presented with an option to bring homicide charges. The grand jury's not even going to have that presented to them. They won't even have that option. But that's not what Daniel Cameron said when he got in front of the public. And now that you have at least one of the grand jurors who's having their say, they're pointing out that the Attorney General had to be called out, because in his press conference, he laid the responsibility on the grand jurors. But as soon as he got called out, Daniel Cameron's little cowardly behind decided, well, I better walk some of that back. And so what's happened is, now it's been brought before a judge that the recordings of the grand jury proceedings, all 20 hours of it, should be made public. Now the judge is already showing that he's on the take. He's saying, well, we'll give Daniel Cameron and his bunch of cronies until Friday so that they can redact any names or any personal information. Yeah, and they'll also be redacting anything that makes it where Daniel Cameron has all of his illegality shown. This is going to be like the freaking Nixon tapes, editing out anything that he knows is going to have him actually liable to legal action. So that's what's happening here. The fix is in that the juror has now broken the ice, and it's been ugly and in public, and they can't hide it. So it's a matter of, okay, well, we're going to see if we can just put up maximum resistance. The judge is going to give us 48 hours so that we can cut out and clip out and edit out as much as possible. Oh, all of this illegal stuff that we told to the jury, all of these illegal and unconstitutional instructions that we gave to the jury, we're gonna go ahead and clip that out. And will claim that, oh, well, these were like names and addresses, you know, it was personal information. Now, what needs to be known is the attorney for this grand juror who has broken their silence has already said that the recording of the grand jury proceedings may not answer all the questions. So just keep in mind, this is the most important thing, is that the grand jurors be able to speak publicly, and that's what they're trying to get done now. But Daniel Cameron doesn't want that to happen. Gee, I wonder why. It's because he's dirty as hell. That's the reason why. And he also understands that this is going to be a complete and thorough refutation of exactly why he was there. He was there to be a black face to bury this murder of a black woman. That's what he was supposed to be, and now he has failed. And he also understands that when the crap hits the fan, them white supremacists, them good old boys that he thought that he was going to be so chummy with, they're going to throw him under the bus. He's going to be the one who goes down for it, because they damn sure aren't. They'll throw him under the bus and say, oh, that Daniel Cameron guy, he was no good. You know how those niggers are. They'll throw him under the bus and there'll be nothing he can do about it. Isn't that what always happens? When white supremacy is done with its tools, it always breaks its tools. But there's more going on here that Daniel Cameron has gotten himself his butt in a crack over. Because one of the main lies that he used, that he was putting forward to the public was, well, you know, the reason that I didn't bring murder charges against the killers of Breonna Taylor was, well, it was because Breonna Taylor's boyfriend shot at the officers first. But of course, as we all know now, it's been reported that the ballistics report that both the Commonwealth Attorney Tom Wine and the State Attorney General Daniel Cameron had regarding the murder of Breonna Taylor, that bullet that the cop was shot with, they cannot even conclude that it came from Kenneth Walker's gun. And let's be clear here. When they say that, that's just them trying to do white-splaining that, well, we're going to make it sound like we can neither confirm nor deny bullcrap. If they thought that they had anything, even a 1% scintilla of a chance to say, yeah, it was Kenneth Walker, all right, they would have run with it and said it was definitely him. So the fact that they did not do that, that is proof that, yeah, they're looking and going, this is probably friendly fire. Blue on blue. You got a bunch of gung-ho good old boys. A bunch of the Mayo militia rolled up on Breonna Taylor's place. And this bunch of inbred hayseeds with their guns out, a bunch of cowards, one and all, shot their own fellow thug in the leg. And by the way, cops shooting each other, that happens a hell of a lot more frequently than you would think. And what they try to do is they know that they were the ones who set off that entire incident. And they were trying to blame it on Kenneth Walker. We do not know anything other than the cops ran up on Breonna Taylor's domicile on a fraudulent warrant, and that the cops began banging in the door. We now know that the individual, the one lone so-called neighbor who they claim said, oh, well, out of 50 neighbors who said we didn't hear the cops announce themselves, we got one who said that he thought that they did. He's since retracted that and said, no, they didn't. I got to take that back. The cops did not. So everything about this murder turned out to be a lie. The cops claimed that there was a postal inspector who told them that there were suspicious packages being sent to Breonna Taylor's address from the alleged drug kingpin Jamarcus Glover. Wrong. Lie. The postal inspector himself said, no one ever said that. I never said that. That's not true. The cops claimed that they announced themselves. Well, why'd they get a no-knock warrant? Then they tried to roll it back and say, well, you know, it wasn't exactly a no-knock warrant. Yes, it was. It was a no-knock warrant. We found out they were lying about that. Kenneth Walker shot first. Now the ballistics report indicates that you guys more likely shot each other, which makes sense. A bunch of hayseeds, a bunch of inbred morons in close proximity to each other. Tragedy will always ensue. But what we also know is that the cops, one of them in particular, actually, one of the murderers of Breonna Taylor, actually entered her residence after he killed her. One of her killers actually entered her residence. That is a complete and thorough breach of the law. If you're a cop who's taken part in a killing, you cannot actually enter the crime scene. You got to stay out to maintain the integrity of the crime scene. But that's the whole point. There are a ton of charges that should have been brought. But the idea is this is white supremacy trying to reassert itself, that when a black person is killed, there's not going to be an investigation. If there's an investigation, there won't be any charges. If there are charges, they won't amount to much. We're going to bury it. White supremacy trying to reassert, okay, you've put us on the defensive. You've smacked us around for the last 6 months. And we got to find a way to get some sort of momentum going in the opposite direction. We thought we were winning. Now we're losing. The whole damn public's against us. And we have got to find a way to reassert our little would-be authority. And that's the reason why this is happening. It has to be blatant. It has to be egregious. That way you understand, see, even if you do call us out, you can know that we're guilty of sin, but there's nothing you can do about it. That's what this is meant to say. You see, we've had a whole bunch of right-wing nuts in the conservative media and their liberal pals who are a bunch of undercover white supremacists who try to be more courteous than not. These guys have understood exactly what's been going on. And you better believe that the exact same system of goodies, guarantees, and giveaways that the white right depends on, that white leftist, that so-called white liberal depends on that same system too. They both draw from the same well and depend on the exact same handouts from white supremacy. The white left and the white right are flip sides of the exact same coin, and you're a damn fool if you try to convince yourself otherwise. So what's been going on is we now see that it hasn't even been years, just days after that grand jury fraud, we find out that it confirms exactly what the black media has been saying. These grand juries have been nothing more than judicial theater put on by prosecutors who have been using the grand juries to bury these prosecutions. Now the question becomes at this point, when is the public going to accept that the police are never ever going to actually rein themselves in? You're not going to shame them into it. I don't care how many phony baloney take-a-knees they do. All the propaganda in the world should not be enough to blind you to that reality. And the DAs and the judges are in it with them. The public is going to have to control this situation. You now have a reality that you must accept, because it's been the case all along, but now you can no longer deny it. The police, the prosecutors, and the judges are working hand in hand to make sure that when black people are killed, if we decide that we're going to go through the channels they set up, there's never going to be justice. The prosecutors will lie through their teeth. They will deliberately try to impanel a jury that is completely and thoroughly sympathetic to the killers. And when that fails, they'll just say, well, you know what? We're going to go to a grand jury because we know that that the law allows for secrecy in the grand jury hearings. And that being the case, we're going to use that as an opportunity to hide behind the grand jury and say, you can't blame me for not getting an indictment. Why? It was that grand jury and there was nothing I could do. And it was the right it was the right verdict. And that's all there is to it. You have the prosecutors acting as de facto members of the defense. In other words, they're acting as accessories and collaborators after the fact. You have these prosecutors operating with a clear anti-black bias. Now, if you think to yourself that there's going to be some sort of state bar or whatever that's going to slap these guys on the wrist or what have you, then you're not dealing in reality. White supremacy is having its back put to the wall right now, and we're the ones putting the bastards' backs to the wall. Their tricks that they've been using are being exposed, and I told you, this is the process we're going to be going through as we strip white supremacy of all of its little strategies and all of its little deflections and all of its little ploys that it tries to use. First, we make it where they can no longer go to a jury and expect for a trial jury to let them off the hook. And I told you that as that happened to be the case, two things were going to occur. One, you were going to have prosecutors being much more aggressive about, well, I can't bring charges no matter how egregious it is. I just can't bring charges. I know. We'll take it to a grand jury. We'll let a grand jury decide. Because when they get in front of a grand jury, they can tell the grand jury, like Bob McCullough did, you don't have to indict. And as we know Daniel Cameron did, I'm not even going to put an indictment for murder as one of the bills that you can bring back. I'm not even going to suggest that as one of the charges for the indictment. You're not even going to have the option to bring an indictment against them. I'm not going to let that be one of the options. You can go with wanton endangerment, but that's pretty much it. And then afterwards, I'll lie and say, well, you can't blame me. It was a grand jury. So all the Fox right-wing nuts and these conservative clowns, they look like the idiots they are. They were so glad to get a headline because that's what this is about. To them, they know that what these guys are doing is illegal. They know exactly what it is. They have no illusions about it. If they did, then shouldn't they be the main ones who are up in arms about this? But they're not, because this is a matter of, to them, we just need to manufacture some headlines that will justify our anti-black violence. We know this is all about legalizing the murder of black people. And this is all about promoting that as aggressively as possible. And yeah, we know that these headlines are lies, but it's a matter of we're trying to win a war of propaganda here. Well, the black media is not playing a propaganda war. It's a power play. And our job is to make sure that we lean as hard as possible on these bastards. No, it is not okay for grand jury proceedings to be secret. And now you see the reason why. And the other thing that these prosecutors are going to resort to and the police are going to resort to, as they are in a situation where they can no longer expect for a trial jury to come back with a not guilty verdict, which means that they can't escape prison by relying on the old, well, we'll go ahead and find enough white people to put on the jury. That game's going to be running thin, not as reliable as it used to be. And these guys need guarantees. They don't want it to be left to chance at all whether they're going to prison or not. Because if you start putting these thugs with badges in prison, start putting these white supremacists with badges in prison, then what happens is the other thugs at the station house are going to be looking and going, whoa, I don't want to be next. The tide has turned and I'm not willing to be a human sacrifice for white supremacy. These are cowards. They have no courage. They have no bravery. They're cowards. And that being the case, there's no honor among these thieves. Honor requires integrity. Integrity requires courage because it means you got to stand by what you say and what you do. And these scumbags are not willing to stand by anything. They need guarantees that absolutely no punishment is going to come to them whatsoever. They need guarantees of that. So as you make it where they can no longer rely on a white jury to come back with a not guilty verdict, and now they can't even rely on the grand juries to remain silent. It's a matter of, hey, you can always go to the grand jury, and the grand jury knows that if they say anything, well, the DA or the attorney general, he can come back with a contempt citation against them, so they know they better not talk. Now what's happening is you got the grand jurors saying, to hell with that secrecy thing. We want everybody to know the dirt that these prosecutors are doing. Now the prosecutors are going to have a chilling effect put on them because they'll realize that first you had it happen in Ferguson. Now it's happened in Louisville. They're not going to be able to rely on the grand jurors to remain silent. So the prosecutors are not going to be able to hide behind, well, it was the grand jury, you see. You're going to have the grand jury going, nah, it was that prosecutor. He was the one who made it where there was no indictment. He was the reason for this. And so the prosecutors, they're going to be looking in a no-win situation. And what will the cops do at that point? Well, what the cops are going to do is they're going to have to accept the fact that they're going to get charged no matter what. They can't get around it. And the prosecutors will not be able to get around it either. The next step that's going to come after this is going to be the cops demanding bench trials. That's going to be their last ditch. Once they realize that trial juries are going to convict them, and that the prosecutor can no longer rely on the grand jury to be a place to bury the prosecution. They can no longer rely on the grand jury to cooperate or to at least suffer in silence and not say anything. The grand jury will no longer be a safe haven to bury these prosecutions. The last ditch is going to be bench trials. Expect to see that. You're going to have all these cops saying, okay, fine then. You're going to charge them. Well, we're going to demand a bench trial. Now, you need to understand how that works. Bench trial means the judge basically acts as both judge and jury, and that being the case, the judges are going to be saying that, well, there just wasn't enough to give this guy a harsh sentence. There just wasn't enough, you see. In fact, we're not even sure if a crime was committed here. That's going to be their last ditch. Because right now they're trying to hide behind the coattails of the public. They're trying to make it seem like, well, it's the public, you see. It's not that the prosecutors and the judges are as dirty and complicit in the murders of these black people as the thugs with badges are. Why, it's the public. The public understands. See, public opinion is split on this. The public, they're in favor of the thugs with badges. They want these cops to be out here killing with impunity. That's what they're trying to do right now. What's happening is these juries are in revolt. They're in revolt because the juries are understanding, hey, these prosecutors are hanging you out to dry. And you got these jurors going, oh, the hell you will. You got to do your own time and your own crime. Okay, you got to do it yourself. You're not going to hide behind us. Now, what also goes unsaid is that you got your Democrats. None of them are at all interested in punishing these prosecutors. Nobody's saying, hey, that Daniel Cameron guy, we ought to have this guy dragged before Congress. House of Representatives should be convening a hearing and making it clear we're going to drag this guy. What you did is illegal. You don't have Democrats saying, hey, we got to put together some sort of slate of candidates to go against these Republicans. And we got to get that Tom Wine guy. He needs to know he's going to get primaried. We need to be pushing all the buttons to punish them. No, because the Democrats are as complicit with this police immunity for murdering black people as the Republicans are. Don't expect to see any of your white cable news networks calling out this garbage and saying, hey, there was a rush to judgment here. People blaming Kenneth Walker for something he didn't even do. The cops were claiming that postal inspectors were giving them tips that they never actually did. The Commonwealth Attorney illegally going to Jamarcus Glover and telling him, I will drop all of these tons of drug charges against you. I'll drop the whole doggone slate if you will just implicate Breonna Taylor. You don't have to say that she did anything. Just say that, well, she was one of the people I was in contact with. We just need to be able to link her name with yours. And if you're willing to go ahead and cop to that, why, we'll make this entire prosecution go away. You'll get probation. That's what they offered Jamarcus Taylor. They offered him probation if he was, think about that. Jamarcus Taylor was supposed to be the big time dope dealer that this entire fiasco occurred because of. Oh, he was supposed to be the guy who all these white cops were so gung-ho. They were going to play CSI Louisville to go after Jamarcus Taylor, to go after Jamarcus Glover, because apparently he's supposed to be this big-time dope dealer. This guy's supposed to be the biggest drug trafficker south of the Mason-Dixon line. And he's supposed to be the reason that all this tragedy occurred. And he is so important, so dangerous, such a big-time criminal, that the Commonwealth Attorney, Tom Wine, the one of the most corrupt prosecutors in America, Daniel Cameron's perhaps the most corrupt, and all that Jamarcus Glover had to do was simply say Breonna Taylor's name in connection with whatever they asked him to plead to. Because that's what it was going to be. They were going to say, just say you were running some drugs. And say that Breonna Taylor was an associate. She was someone you knew. We just need to be able to build a false association. You know what a false association is? It's where you take two completely unrelated subjects and you mention them repeatedly in close proximity. You know, like how George W. Bush was talking about Iraq and 9/11, Saddam, Al-Qaeda, Saddam, Iraq, Al-Qaeda. That's how you build a false association in people's minds. You take two completely unrelated things and mention them in close proximity repeatedly. And that's what they were attempting to do to Breonna Taylor. Look at the illegality here. I mean, for God's sake, you think Florida, Texas, and New Jersey are corrupt as hell? Kentucky is clearly the freaking rectum of judicial corruption. Daniel Cameron knew that he had lied to the grand jury. He knew that he had lied to the public when he claimed that the grand jury brought this back. Why, it was the grand jury's idea. And if it was their idea, well, that's just the end of it. He was lying all the way. And calling for a state of emergency, what that meant was that's under law. That's what you call knowledge of guilt as far as I'm concerned. To me, I think that if anybody has any brains, that definitely meets the standard of knowledge of guilt. Daniel Cameron knew that he had not presented an indictment to the grand jury. Of course, he knew that the public was going to be outraged because he deliberately intended to mislead the public that, oh, well, the reason that the grand jury didn't bring back an indictment of murder was because there wasn't enough to substantiate it. When the truth was, he deliberately did not even give them the option to bring back an indictment for murder. He didn't even give the grand jury an option to do that. But that's not what he said when he got in front of the cameras. This is how dirty white supremacy is getting because of the pressure that's being put on them. They have to be this blatant, have to be this clumsy, because every time that they try to cover up their crimes, it blows up in their faces. They cannot depend on juries to just shrug and go, well, if a white cop kills a black person, that's just the end of it. They can't depend on the secrecy and silence of the grand jurors. You are sworn to secrecy. You can't tell anybody about all of my illegal maneuvering. You must not say anything. People are up here leaking. You can't keep this stuff a secret. So since they're not able to depend on their usual channels of being able to divert and derail the course of justice, what's happening now is they're trying to figure out, well, what can we do? Only thing they got left, but by the time we're done, they're going to be left only with the judges. That's going to be their last ditch. I want you to see this stuff before it happens. Because they're going to have to. They're going to realize you cannot depend on the public in any shape, form, or fashion, and we have completely failed to manufacture the false narrative that, oh, well, the public's with us. Why? That grand jury, they came back with a no bill because they knew that those niggers deserved to die. Turns out the grand jurors were speaking and saying, nope, they never mentioned it to us, and that's extraordinary. What it means is you got people who are making it clear, we want to indict the police. We want to indict the police, but you should also want to indict Tom Wine and Daniel Cameron as well. You should also want to indict them too. What they have both done is malfeasance in office. What Tom Wine did is prosecutorial misconduct. And what he did against Kenneth Walker, trying to put together a false case when he knew damn well that the ballistics report showed clearly that Kenneth Walker did not shoot that cop in the leg. And let's be blunt here. When they try to say well, we can't conclusively say that he did or didn't bullcrap. What that means is they tried to find some way to pin it on him and they couldn't find anything. So they're trying to clean it up and trying to say, well, we can neither confirm nor deny. That means that they can't confirm it. They tried. That means that they know the cops shot each other. It was thug on thug violence. That's what it was. And they don't want to have to say it. So they're trying to clean it up and pretty it up. And make it sound like, well, it was him. We just couldn't prove it. That's all. No, they could not substantiate that the bullet actually came from Mr. Walker's gun, which means it came from the cop's gun. They just don't want to have to say it. This is white supremacy backed into a corner. This is white supremacy unable to hide behind its usual deflections and dodges and tricks. The bag of tricks is emptying quickly. The police are seeing that they don't have the prosecutors able to protect them anymore. The prosecutors can't give them that immunity anymore. The public's making it clear. You give the public a chance to indict them, they're going to do it. The prosecutor already knows he can't afford to say, well, I'm not going to indict. They already know what would happen if they did that. So instead, it's a matter of, well, I'm going to lie and say the public didn't want to do it. And the public's saying, yes, we do. This is just buying the bastards even more trouble. Everything they try to do to try to continue the racist, fraudulent practice of protecting the thugs with badges blows up in their faces. Everything they do just makes the situation worse. And this is good. But here's the thing. White supremacy is not going to fall on its own. These racist police and these racist DAs and these racist judges who are acting as a cabal against us, they've made it where there is no system of law and order that a black person is going to be able to appeal to, because the individuals who you're expecting to punish each other have made it clear they're not going to do that. This is a state of utter and complete lawlessness. When the police are lying and making up stories, and you got judges who don't even corroborate whether or not the police lied about postal inspectors' phony claims that there were suspicious packages going to Breonna Taylor's address. The judge never even bothers to figure out, hey, before we do this, because a no-knock warrant's pretty serious, especially for, the biggest drug dealers south of the Mason-Dixon line, allegedly. Just want to make sure we got all of our ducks in a row, that everyone's in agreement, because the last thing we want is for this guy to walk on a technicality. Notice how nobody mentioned that. Nobody even thought about that. Because, hey, you're talking about a black person, and there's no such thing as a technicality where a black person's concerned. That's how automated the process of locking and killing black people has become. But you have lawlessness when the police are lying about the pretenses for which they seek a search warrant or an arrest warrant, and judges who deliberately do not vet whether or not the police are telling the truth. It is lawlessness when the police just run up on a place, don't even bother to find out, are there children in there? Are there elderly people, innocent bystanders? They don't even do surveillance to make sure that, hey, we want to make certain that the only people there are the people that we're there for. It is lawlessness when the police start busting shots at each other and then spraying bullets all over the place into other people's apartments all over the place. That is lawlessness. When the police violate the law after they murder Breonna Taylor and decide, well, we're going to search the people. Wait a minute, hold on. You just got through committing a crime. This is now a crime scene. You can't go into her apartment. Well, we're going in anyway. When that Hankinson or whichever one of those three thugs who murdered her, when he decided to go searching her apartment anyway, and there's video of him doing it, body camera footage of him doing it, that is illegal. He broke the law. He didn't just violate department policy. He violated the law. By law, he cannot do that. He can wait and secure the scene until the crime scene investigators get there, but that's all he can do. He cannot actually go in there. That's the scene of a crime. But he did anyway. That's lawlessness. When you have a corrupt Commonwealth attorney like Tom Wine, who sees the ballistic report that clearly shows you cannot say that Kenneth Walker shot anyone. And he decides, well, I'm going to charge this guy anyway because we got to make it very clear. Don't you dare call yourself defending yourself from a white supremacist thug attack. You're not going to do that. That is lawlessness. When both the Commonwealth Attorney and the State Attorney General put their heads together and conspire that they are going to lie in order to help three murderers not have to face punishment for their actions, that is lawlessness. When the Commonwealth Attorney calls himself going to a witness and say, I need you to lie and say that this person we killed was involved in a drug operation so that we can manufacture some favorable headlines. We need to justify the kill after the fact. So we need you to lie. When you have a Commonwealth Attorney who tries to suborn perjury, that is lawlessness. When you have a State Attorney General who lies by omission to the grand jury, who withholds evidence, who deliberately tailors the bill so that it does not have anything that he doesn't want there because he's deliberately trying to manufacture a not guilty, or he's trying to manufacture a no bill from the grand jury. He doesn't want the grand jury to come back with any sort of indictment, so he's manufacturing a circumstance where that would be impossible. And then he goes in front of the cameras and lies and misrepresents the events and says that, well, it was the grand jury. It wasn't me. You can't blame me. It was the grand jury. When you have an attorney general engaged in that behavior, that is prosecutorial misconduct. Going after Kenneth Walker for defending himself and defending his woman, that is malicious prosecution. The police lying and claiming that postal inspectors told them that Breonna Taylor was getting suspicious packages when you had the postal inspector himself, Tony Gooden, who said, we told them that there were no suspicious packages. There was nothing there. That is lawlessness. And you're not going to have these criminals with badges, criminals with law degrees, who are going to be brought to justice by a system that they themselves, you're depending on them to arrest and indict themselves. The public has a responsibility to get the authorities under control when the authorities are out of control. The public has a responsibility to do so and a duty to do so. There is a state of lawlessness that exists and has always existed because this country, the United States, is not a country of laws. John Adams talked about that. Are we a country of laws or a country of men? Well, it's damn sure not a country of laws. It's a country of men, white men. It's certainly not a country of laws. The law is whatever the white supremacists say it is, and that changes depending on whatever the white supremacist wants at any particular moment. Take a look at what happened in the case of Breonna Taylor. Does this look like a case of a country of laws or a country of men? Is it a country of the rule of law or a country of the whim of white men? Which one is it? How many cases of lawlessness, how many instances of blatant illegality have to be piled up before you're willing to understand that this is a situation that's going to have to be brought under control? Daniel Cameron is not going to dutifully say, you know what, you got me. I lied. I'm going to throw myself on the mercy of the court. The judges are not going to say, you bastard, you have not merely violated the law as the so-called top cop of the state, which means that he's certified dirty. You have violated justice itself by what you did. You lied. Nobody's going to go to Tom Wine and say, as the Commonwealth Attorney, you deliberately tried to suborn perjury. You tried to initiate a malicious prosecution against an innocent man who was guilty of nothing more than stopping 3 thugs from bursting into his woman's home. He was defending himself and his woman from 3 thugs. Nobody's going to be going to those cops and saying, you guys lied in your affidavit. You lied in your search warrant. You lied in your report, and you violated a crime scene because you were trying to figure out how to justify a murder after the fact. Now, this is not to say that justice cannot be done, but you got to understand, you're expecting the friends and buddies of the Tom Wines and the Daniel Camerons and the 3 thugs with badges. You're expecting their friends and buddies and colleagues who are just as dirty as them. You're expecting them to have a bout of conscience and say, why, we've been violating and ignoring the law for 500 years, but today we've had an epiphany. We're going to start enforcing it now. No. All that's going to be happening is they're going to be saying, well, we got to look into this and it's very serious. And, well, Daniel Cameron, perhaps, you should give a statement explaining this and we'll just say no harm, no foul. No, you're demanding punishment. But the question is, who's going to be doling out the punishment? Are you going to be expecting a state bar disciplinary committee to do that? All that they can do at most is to strip Daniel Cameron and Tom Wine of their law degrees. Who's going to put the state attorney general in prison? Who's going to prosecute him for wrongdoing? Who's going to prosecute Tom Wine for his malfeasance in office, for his malicious prosecution, for suborning perjury? Who's going to make sure that they are made to answer for their multitude of crimes? Who's going to make sure that justice is done? And justice means punishment, harsh prison time. At the very least, you have the so-called authorities who are the biggest criminals in the country. The public has no obligation to sit on their hands while this state of lawlessness continues. A bunch of criminals are attempting to assert some sort of control over the public. The public has every right to not be under the domination of a bunch of criminals, but that's not going to be coming from the authorities. That starts at the grassroots. But you understand, this is just another reminder. This is just a matter of, we've been saying it all along, is no surprise to us, but it's out there blatant and it's undeniable, and you will not see your white media or your white leftists or your Democrats or your so-called progressives making a big deal out of this. That white liberal, he understands that he needs the police to protect his position as a white person just as much as the most hardcore, Proud Boy, Boogaloo Boy, Adam Waffen, KKK, white Aryan resistance thug. The law is very clear about what is permissible and not permissible under these circumstances. Daniel Cameron knows that he violated the law. The Kentucky State Bar knows he's violated the law. Every lawmaker and lawyer in the state knows that he did. Same thing with Tom Wine. But it's a matter of, they consider themselves to be showing professional courtesy to one another. Well, we don't try to get each other in trouble. Well, it's up to the public to make it very clear that's not their call. You've already got people of conscience who are already calling these guys out and exposing their crimes and their illegality. But if the individuals who are supposed to be the administrators of the system refuse to enforce the law, then it falls to the public to make sure that the laws are actually upheld. If the police and the prosecutors and the judges have all decided to close ranks against the public, then the public has every right to make sure that the public will prevails. And nobody is going to be trying to conceal or otherwise make a secret of that.